Good morning, BookTube. It's early morning on Wednesday. We are in the midst of our third nor'easter in less than 2 weeks. I think it's been 11 days between them, and we may have another on the way. So the kids were off from school yesterday. They're on a 2-hour delay today, and the roads are buried. We've used a snowblower and shovels here a couple times in the last 2 days. It's why I may look so unkempt. But we'll go ahead and get ready for work and school here in a bit, and go out and face the weather. But before we did that, I thought I'd do a little bit of a book chat. Since I had some time yesterday, I was able to sit around and do a little reading. And I had brought home a book that Donor 1 had sent to our library to read before I processed it. I had a release date that gave me a little bit of time. And I was glad to read it, and I'm glad I did. It's called Creators, Conquerors, and Citizens, A History of Ancient Greece. And it's a Oxford University Press book, and it is 2018. So it's a survey of ancient Greek history. It's by Robert Waterfield, who's an independent scholar and translator living in southern Greece. In addition to more than 25 translations of work of Greek literature, he's the author of numerous books, including Dividing the Spoils, The War for Alexander the Great's Empire, and Taken at the Flood, The Roman Conquest of Greece. Both of those subjects are covered in this volume. And like I say, it's a survey. It's the first survey of Greek history I've read in years, and it's very up to date, obviously. So with his books and translations, I'll just show you on the title page, that's what he's done. So he's a very accomplished fellow. So when you're reading nonfiction, it's always a good thing, first of all, to know who wrote it and what their qualifications are, what the connection with the material is, if any. So the next thing I usually do is, besides the date, I'll look at the date, who the publisher is. Oxford University Press obviously has a reputation. Find out about the author. Then I look at the format. So under contents, we have preface and acknowledgments, which is typical, but we have conventions and abbreviations, which is helpful, the chronology and king lists, and we have maps. And then before I get to the meat of the text, I'll look in the back here and I'll see what else it has. In this case, it has a glossary, recommended reading, and index. So recommended reading is sort of in place of the standard bibliography. It's almost like an annotated bibliography where they can give you a little more information. And you'll want to check that out. In this case, I did. So under Chapter 18, the Macedonian Conquests, typically the paragraph starts out, For Macedonian History, N. Hammond's The Macedonian State, The Origins, Institution, and History, Oxford University Press, 1989, and then he goes on and on and on, and he'll even say why the book is on the list. It's particularly strong in this, or see chapters on this, or whatever the subject may be. So then we'll get to the meat of the contents, and that he divides it in acts. So Act 1, the Archaic period, 350 to 480, the formation of states. Before that, he'd had an introduction. 1 was environmental background, and 2 was historical background. So then Act 2, the Classical period, 479 to 323, a tale mainly of 2 cities. And then Act 3, the Hellenistic period, Greeks, Macedonians, and Romans. So, it was give you an example of some of the maps. these are to start out before the body of the text, and they're easy to read, and they provide you a way of relating one area to the next. There's a physical map of Greece. So you use a pot to show farming. So there's illustrations throughout this volume. And they're helpful. So here we start off with Alexander the Great and his impact. And they'll break that down by region. So one of the things that the author's looking at is the disunity of the Greeks. It was polis against polis, community against community. It was, a stratified society, so those groups are against each other and in conflict with each other. And then, even though there was an overarching sense of a Greek culture, an Athenian was an Athenian, and a Spartan was a Spartan, a Corinthian was a Corinthian. He's also, or she also, was a member of their tribe. Also, you had slaves, you had, freed persons. Everybody had multiple relations with society, which is always true, but it manifests itself in the Greek world in conflict, in competition, constant competition. And the Greeks never did manage to unify themselves. Now, Philip and Alexander the Great, and eventually the Romans all managed to keep Greece unified. One of the interesting tales is how Athens did manage, within its sphere of its own polis, did unify the various strata of society, and all this with their democracy, which is a pretty amazing story. But it was a special circumstance. And how very different Sparta was. And then, of course, against the backdrop with the Persian Wars, the Peloponnesian War. So all this is covered in a lively manner, but with up-to-date materials. Archaeology has advanced since I read about a survey like this. Archaeology has made huge advances. Sciences are being applied. Everything from dating to DNA, everything like this has changed so much in the last 20 years. Actually, in the last 100 years. I mean, there's been a constant advance in how we can see these materials. And Philip's tomb, Alexander the Great's father's tomb, being found. All these things are covered. This is heavy on the political and social history. Attention is given to the arts, philosophy. You'll have a little piece on the Library of Alexandria. For a librarian, Demetrius of Phaleron is a famous name because of the Library of Alexandria. You have some artists being mentioned, and then you have Socrates' fate being described as maybe not the romanticized version we get in most of our culture. But be that as it may, it is not a history that's focused heavily on the humanities. It's a history it's very much a political and social history as opposed to art, philosophy, and literature. All those things come up, but it's not the main focus. And that's stated explicitly. So it's fine. But it's a wonderful book. So it's a compelling read because the story is so compelling. But the author manages to take a vast amount of material and keep the train rolling. You feel like you're on a journey and you know where all this ends, but there's a lot of sights to see on the way, so it's an enjoyable trip. So I would highly recommend it if you need a 1-volume survey of ancient Greek history, and it's well done. So with that, I'm going to go get ready for work. Hopefully the town comes by and plows the road eventually, and we'll get the kids off to school, and I'm off for a long day at the library. All right, I just walked the kids to school, and now I'm walking home, and hopefully I don't run into bears or fisher cats. This is the wildest part of the road. A little slick. We're actually going downhill. I don't know if you can tell on the video. Woods are just absolutely filled with heavy wet snow. See how much snow is in the trees. You always worry about them breaking. There's power lines up there. Whoa, almost took a... That guy sanded his driveway pretty good. Better than the towns down on the road here. This may surprise you, but this is actually a major thoroughfare. This is the, it's a dirt road, but it's a major thoroughfare. It's actually the road where the school's located. So I thought it was safe for today to walk my kids, and then I'll walk back up to get them. And I just changed my shift at the library so I can do that. And then when my wife comes home from work, I'll actually take the heavier car. She has it right now. So I'm actually doing like a short stutter step jog because I'm trying to keep my balance. I've got a walking stick. I actually use it for my littlest boy to keep his balance when he's walking. So he can't carry it at school, obviously, so I walk back to it. So I'm about halfway. Come to the covered bridge. That's behind me. So try to get through here without any cars coming. So it's only one lane. And the cars can easily see each other, but they have a little more trouble seeing a person. Give you a quick shot of the ravine, and there's the water. All right, I'm going to make my way through. It's a very, very old bridge. It was actually built by a man who couldn't even read or write. And it's been here for well over a century and a half. You see how it's built. Alright, we made it through there pretty good. And we'll continue our walk.